Namaste. Namaste to one and all, and a very warm welcome to the Indic Samvad brought to you by the Institute of Indic Wisdom. I would like to begin this Samvad with a short invocation. So I'm inviting all of you to join me in this prayer. Om. 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 Sahana Bhavatu. Sahanau Bhunaktu. सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम। Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. We are very blessed to have amongst us Shri Gopalaswamy and Brahmachari Sai. A little bit about the Institute for Indic Wisdom before we get into the Samvad of the day. The Institute for Indic Wisdom is committed to amplifying the global permeation of Indic wisdom through partnerships, alliances, and self-organizing networks. In the long run, IIW will serve as the nodal institution that will energize a global Indic wisdom movement. We seek to translate Indic wisdom into practical tools, frameworks, and approaches for individual, organizational, and ecosystem transformation. This is what we are referring to as moving from Sanatana, that which is timeless, to Nitya Nutana, that which is regenerating and ever replenishing. IIW undertakes the mining and deep study of Indic Shastras, contemporizing the nuggets of wisdom and contextualizing them for solving current problems. IIW specifically focuses on three areas: applied Indic psychology, applied Indic leadership, and applied organizational design. Our Indic Samvad series is an endeavor to discuss, celebrate, and dialogue intelligent ways of doing just this. We invite renowned speakers across the world who not just share their approaches, but also lay out impediments, challenges, and their rich experience through this journey. We are very blessed to have Rajji and Saiji. And on that note, I would like to hand it over to Saiji to please take it forward.
Thank you, Namrata. Namaste to everybody. Namaste to Rajji. We are fortunate to have Shri Gopalaswamy with us, who is an author, and whose book is called The Science of Gita. And Rajji is a global technology director of global R&D at Novelis, which is an Aditya Birla group company, and he is based out of Georgia in the United States. Rajji spent his pre-university days in Chennai and Tiruchi. Apart from studying, he was also exposed to And he was also immersed in our Shastras and our spiritual practices as a child. Then he moved and went on to BITS Pilani, did his graduation in engineering from there, then went on to do his MS from Missouri University of Science and Technology, and then did his PhD from the Pennsylvania State University, which is called the Penn State. Of course, he has also done his MBA post that from the Booth School at the University of Chicago. Now, after having had an illustrious career in technology, management of technology, management of R&D, he, as he entered his, I suppose it's the 4th decade of his life, he rediscovered his spiritual roots. He rediscovered Bhagavad Gita through some of his classmates and all getting into a satsang. He came to the influence of Swami Guruparanandaji and his unique approach to looking at Bhagavad Gita. As a child, and Raji was always wondering how the apparently diverse domains of philosophy and science can be blended, like having a unified theory of spirituality and science. That has been his innate kind of curiosity, which came back after he delved again into Bhagavad Gita. So, which has resulted in this book called the Science of the Gita. So, he brings in this unique unification of science, technology, along with the core part of our life, which is spirituality, which are all, we are all spiritual beings. So Raji, what his first book is focused on the first 3 chapters of Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, and he is going to take us through one perspective and one practice from the this book. The perspective is called Seer-Seen, which is spiritualistic, evolutionary, empirical science, and he will also take us through this meditation, exercise, diet, yoga, and karma yoga as a unique combination that he has discovered. So we have with us somebody who has delved deep, who is bringing his own mananam and nididhyasanam in the form of a unique blend of science and spirituality. So with that introduction, I hand over the session to Raji. Over to you, Raji.
Namaste, everyone, and thank you so much, Saiji, for those kind words, as well as to Namrataji. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we will get started. Just 1 second. And hopefully my screen should be visible now. It's in the wrong screen, I think. Yes, it is. Okay. Sorry. I should have. Yes. And let me go to slideshow. Yep. Thank you. So we will talk about some perspectives for practicing conscious leadership. And we will start quickly with Shanti Mantram from the Aitreya, which I found very insightful and helpful. So I'll just chant it really quickly and we will get into it. Om Van Me Manasi Pratishtita Mano Me Vachi Pratishtitam Avira Vir Mayedi Vedasya Maani Istaha Shrutam Me Ma Prahasiranena Ditena Horatran Santadami Ridam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanmam Avatu Tat Vaktaram Avatu Avatu Mam Avatu Vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much for the opportunity today to everybody. And a word of gratitude to my mother and father for their blessings. I think my father might have been able to join this as well. Namaste to Swami Guru Parananda and for his blessings, without whose insights and lectures I would not definitely be here. Namaste to Daivam, of course. Namaste to Professor V. Krishnamurti for his blessings. We will talk about him as well as we get into it. Namaste and thank you very much to the Institute of Indic Wisdom and to Sai Sambatji for the opportunity to have this discussion, and to everyone that make these events possible. I think it's a brilliant and great initiative to be able to spread the word of like Namrata ji was mentioning, Sanatana Dharma globally. And to our Gita Satsang group, Saiji, you referred to it. They are definitely the root cause for me and several of our friends to be seekers, and to the entire Guru Shishya lineage for giving us the scriptures of ancient India, Vedanta, Upanishads, Gita, and so many other scriptures. So with that, let's get into the discussion itself. So I'll give a quick introduction to the book and how it's architected, what is the architecture behind the book, and the Seer and MEDYK frameworks. The Seer framework is essentially a proposal for consciousness and experience, and it brings science and spirituality as complements to each other. And we'll get into it. I feel very strongly about this. The MEDYK is basically how we gain leadership over ourselves. So it's for self-leadership is what I'm calling it. It's a very simple thing. I think it's not going to be anything new to us, but it's I will say that it's basically nice packaging, as we call it. Then we'll discuss a couple of case studies, one personal experience of mine and one experience which I observed during the course of work in a project, and then conclude with how Indic wisdom and Vedanta are more than sufficient for conscious leadership for ourselves throughout our lives. So with that, so let's look at the book architecture itself and the Seer and MEDYK frameworks very briefly. So the book is titled Open Our Minds, Science of the Gita, and I named it Part 1 for a reason. And you can see the O and M are highlighted, obviously for a very specific reason. The book itself covers chapters 1 to 3 of the Gita. Essentially, Swami Guru Parananda has 50 lectures called his Essence of Gita lectures. He has done thousands of lectures, just like all the other Swamijis over the years. The unique thing with Swami Guru Parananda's lectures are they are all in Tamil, which is my mother tongue. So you can imagine when you are listening to lectures in your native tongue, you tend to relate to it much better. You tend to connect with those lectures. So that's what happened in my case. So I took Swami Guru Parananda's lectures. I asked him for his permission and his blessings. And then I started kind of paraphrasing and also bringing in some deep dives, which I call them deep dives through stories and a question and answer format. It's basically the Upanishadic style. It's not my new discovery or my new way of presenting things. This has been done for thousands of years. The students and Guru doing deep inquiry, the Guru presenting concepts, Vedanta concepts, and challenging the students, and vice versa. The students also asking questions and challenging. But I try to bring in a lot of stories in the process. The Guru would explain some concept through a story or through some examples. And the Gita is also presented as an essence of the Upanishads, which the Gita actually happens to be. So that is essentially the structure of the book. It covers chapters 1 to 3. which, as you can see, it's lectures 1 to 8 by Swami Guru Parananda, hence the part 1. So I hope to keep continuing this journey as we go along. So the next one is, as I was doing this, I realized, in fact, even the first lecture I listened to by Swamiji, I realized I started with Mundaka Upanishad actually, and I realized how scientific it was. So in my discussions with several of my friends and others from the Gita Satsang group and several other people, I ended up with this proposal called SEES of a framework, which is basically spiritualistic, evolutionary, empirical science. So if we take science of the observed world, which you see in the, let me just switch on the laser pointer. So the science of the observed, what I mean by that is the science, everyday science that we are all familiar with: technology, science, engineering, mathematics, the 12 years of school plus 4 years and more of college and so on, and our professional lives. All of that is basically consumed within the science of the observed. But then there is the science of the observer or consciousness, and that is missing, if you ask me, in our daily life. So that's the thing that I'm proposing, that it's always a debate, a very heated debate, that science of the observer and science of the observed are very different and they are very divergent. But I'm proposing that no, they are not divergent. They're actually very convergent and very essential to be working together. So we'll talk about that. MEDYK, like I said, it's meditation, exercise, diet, yoga, and karma yoga. So we will talk about that, on how this MEDYK is a subset of the SEES framework. And essentially, very quick summary of the book itself is chapter 2 and chapter 3. In chapter 2 itself, as we all know, Sri Krishna, he presents the entire concept in chapter 2 itself, but Arjuna doesn't fully understand it, so he does another 16 chapters. So I try to kind of go back and forth between all the forms of yoga and introduce them, as well as bring in teachings from Vedanta. And as I was doing this, like Saji was mentioning, this was my own learning at the same time. So when I was writing, putting things down in writing helps one to learn more, is what works for me. And that I was going through my own Shravanam and Mananam, meaning I was also listening to Swamiji's lectures and putting them down in writing, which made me go through my Mananam and reflection and thinking on the teachings. So moving on to seize the framework itself, let's get into the framework and how it brings in the conscious leadership, which is what we want to get to. So SEES essentially brings consciousness into the overall equation of daily life, into whether we are scientists or engineers or finance people or accountants or whatever profession, even in sports or everything that we can think of. This framework brings consciousness into the equation of our daily life. So now I'll present these equations. So the first equation that I want to propose is SEES is the science of consciousness plus the science of the material world. So everything that we experience in our waking state, from the moment we wake up to when we go to sleep, is all the material world. And then there's the consciousness which is operating in the background all the time. And if we've gone through Bhagavad Gita and or the Upanishads, we all know what this is. This is the observer, or whoever it is that is observing, or we might also say who this individual person is, or I can ask myself, who am I doing the observation and experiencing the material world. So it is essentially the science of the observer and in combination with the science of the observer. Like I said, there is a lot of debate on this is divergent from this, but I don't believe it is divergent. It has to work together to get to that conscious leadership. We can also say it is the science of Brahman, which is what the Upanishads claim repeatedly over and over, all the Upanishads, as we know. And there are various different variations on that, Advaita, Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita, and so on. But essentially, it's the science of the absolute reality plus the science of the transient reality, the temporary things that the material world continuously keeps going through the change. So that is essentially the C's. Now, there are some important questions. Why is this important? Why should we consider this as a combination with our daily life, our observed material world experience? What does it have to do with conscious leadership? Why does spirituality have to complement materialistic pursuit? Essentially, I'm rewording the same question. But why and how does it bring conscious leadership to the forefront? Why does this part bring conscious leadership to the forefront? And again, most of you, if not all of you, might have seen this or might have experienced it individually and would love to have a discussion around that. But let's get a little bit deeper into this left portion of the equation itself. What does all that actually mean? So in our context of conscious leadership, I am proposing that we see the observer. So let's talk about the observer itself. So that's what C's is, right? The science of the observer or the consciousness. So when we observe how we are observing, how we ourselves are observing and responding to things, it can be objects, people, animals, anything, on a daily basis, moment to moment, at every moment, I believe we are accessing conscious leadership because we are observing ourselves. So it's kind of a loop within ourselves, right? And there are so many works and eminent philosophers, scientists, so many people that have thought about it. Again, this is not, I'm not inventing or coming up with a new theory. This is already there in the Gita and the Upanishads. I'm just rewording it in English. But when we do this, when we observe ourselves on how we are observing the outside world and responding to the outside world, I think there is a zone of transformation or an awakening. So we will talk about that, what that really means. And we might have seen some of these things being talked about, like between the time of observation and our response, there is a gap. There is a gap, and that's the gap where we can control how we respond to things. It's essentially saying the same thing here. Now, what if two people are interacting? If I'm interacting with somebody at work or someone in the family or friends, how will this experience bring the conscious leadership into this equation of two people interacting? Or it can be many people interacting, or it can be a lot of people interacting. So when we do this, when each person is consciously thinking about and observing themselves, then the leadership, the conscious leadership automatically happens. So what do we mean by that? Basically, every interaction that we have with another being, be it human or non-human or whatever that is, every interaction becomes very productive because everyone is making an observation of themselves before they give a response. And my personal experience definitely confirms that it becomes very action-oriented, and it becomes a very positive way of motivating ourselves or inspiring ourselves for action. So I'm going to get into a little bit of a corporate culture and how that this type of what we already have in spirituality works in corporate culture. So let's see that, and then we'll come back to the C's itself. So the experiencer or the observer, which is me, tailoring the experience for myself. for results whenever I interact with another person, just like what we saw. So in corporate culture, the results pyramid is quite popular, and you all might be quite familiar with this. I just picked a reference from this company that you can see here. I also got an image where it was showing an eye on a pyramid. So I thought this was really appropriate. So I put it on there. The results pyramid actually in any company or any community, it starts with the foundation of experience. So what does each person's experience look like? And the experience leads to beliefs about something, about the company. It can be about the local experience, about the school, if we are studying in a school or a college or anywhere we are. And these beliefs actually lead to how we act on things, actions. And of course, as we all know, directly from Bhagavad Gita, actions produce results. And then it goes into a continuous loop. The results create new experiences, and then leading to beliefs, actions, and results, and the cycle continues, right? So that's the results pyramid. So I don't see a big difference with the results pyramid between what the law of karma or causality talks about in the Bhagavad Gita directly given to us by Shri Krishna and as well as the Upanishads. So what is this experience? How do we control our experience, and why do we need to control it? And we talked about the correlation of corporate culture. So I can tell you, as will almost everybody, if not everyone at my company and so many other companies, this culture, if we control if we have the right experiences for everybody in a company, it creates a culture that results in excellent financials, because the right experiences create the right beliefs, which result in the right actions, creating the right results. Ultimately, it leads to really good financial results. So that's why I call it Journey on Financials. Now, but is the result or the final goal only the financials for a company? We all know we live in a world where that's not the only goal, right? We want to make sure that we are serving society as a good citizen, corporate social responsibility departments being established, ESG being the new, well, we are calling it new, but it's basically a source of responsibility that companies have also brought in, as well as how to address climate change and so many other things. So the thing is, this pyramid can apply to everything, and that's basically the point. It's not only financial results; it's results for everything. But we go back to the experience. This experience being the fundamental foundation behind everything else. And experience is an ocean, right? There's millions of factors that determine our experience moment to moment. In fact, if you go to, this is jumping to Gita chapter 7, but basically in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about what that chapter itself is called Jnana Vijnana Yoga. And this knowledge, and Vijnana is experience, Jnana is knowledge. And Vijnana Yoga is basically how the experience of oneself with the entire world and universe creates the right environment to attain true knowledge. That's Bhagavad Gita, right? But it's essentially, this results pyramid is saying the same thing, if you ask me, and we can discuss this, of course. So basically, experience creates conscious leadership. So when we realize that, how does that happen, right? So coming back to this conscious leadership principle, how do we do that? The foundation being the experience. So we're all in agreement now between the results pyramid and the Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads, everything going towards that experience of the observer, of the consciousness, leading to this conscious leadership. So when we realize, how does that happen? I'm trying to give the steps here. When we realize we are part of a bigger whole. So when we join a company, I'll take the company example here, which is simple to explain. When we realize we are part of a company and part of this culture, we are kind of moving in the right direction. And the company is also giving us the right experiences. Then our colleagues, everybody that we work with, our friends, colleagues, everyone every day feels the same way, and we are becoming more conscious. So I capitalize the C in conscious, and I'm saying now we are walking. We are walking and going in the right direction with creating the right experiences for ourselves every day. But the next level of this is actually the Vedanta part, which to me is just simply beautiful, because it's already been given to us for thousands of years. We have to realize that we are not just part of the whole, but the whole itself. And everybody in the company realizes that. So think about that. We are conscious that we are conscious. We are observing, each of us is observing ourselves and how we respond to create the right experiences for everybody around us. Then we are running and sprinting. We are converging to a completely different level. So I would say that, financial results and all the other things will automatically fall into place. There is no question about that. So therefore, going back to this initial proposal, the science of consciousness is a very essential part to combine with the science of the observed world. My claim is it is the pathway to get to that conscious leadership. So I'll transition to the MEDYK framework. And this is basically, like I said, it's nothing new. It's basically meditation, exercise, diet, yoga, and karma yoga, doing it in that order. And I'll talk more about it. And my request is that we all need this MEDYK to lead ourselves. So this is more about leadership of ourselves, self-leadership, to get to that right experience and to get into that conscious leadership mindset. So what is it? What is the MEDYK? It's basically a subset under the C's framework, helping us get leadership over ourselves first, or leadership over ourselves first, and create a good balance starting with the mind. So, and I try to address this fairly emphatically in the preface of the book, that we tend to lose focus on what is happening within our minds when we do so many different things, because if we control our minds to give ourselves the right experience, we are going to create the right experience for others. That's what I call, creating the balance starting with the mind. So MEDYK, like we just saw, is part of the C's framework in spirituality, but starting with mental health again. And I call this mind balance. And again, nothing new, no new claims, but I call this mind balance rather than work-life balance. So what I've been thinking is, what is work itself? So there's so many definitions of that. But if we keep saying work-life balance, do we mean to say that work is not life at all? Like work is something that has to be done, and there is no life attached to the work? Obviously, that's not true. So instead of saying work-life balance, why don't we call it mind balance? As long as we have the mind balance, everything else gets balanced. That's the claim. And to get to that mind balance and mind leadership, I'm just saying MEDYK is the only MEDYK needed. Obviously a play on words, but just presenting you the overall framework here. This is a crowded this gets a little crowded, but just focus on the outer loop. So I'm saying start here, start with meditation and get into that mindfulness framework in the mind, which then can, the exercise, diet, yoga, karma yoga, those are all daily activities, and we don't need to get into the details of each of these. There are zillions of beautiful ways we can learn to do all of them. But essentially, the only thing that I am saying is we have to start with meditation or the mind balance. Once we get the starting point right, everything else gets balanced and falls in place. Because we have to have the right mind to go and tell ourselves, motivate ourselves to exercise. We have to have the right mind to eat the right things. And I can tell you, I fall trap to all of these things. I'm not by no means I am perfect with this loop, but the discovery and definitely the things that have made a difference for myself is starting with the mind. And of course, yoga and karma yoga, there are so many connections and links between these. But again, if you take this loop and go deeper, starting with the mental balance gives us social, physical, economic, everything else falls in place. That's the idea here with the MEDYK framework. So we talked about two frameworks, right? The C's and the MEDYK. The C's is basically bringing consciousness into the signs of the observed and adding them together to get to that conscious leadership concept, and to get to conscious leadership itself. And we also saw how experience plays a very pivotal role there. And then the MEDYK is for getting leadership over ourselves, the mind leadership. So with that, let me go to a couple of what I call case studies. One personal and one that I observed. The first one is on the MEDYK itself. So this is my COVID experience. So back in 2020, when COVID was spreading and we all had complete havoc everywhere in the world, in America, in India, everywhere. We all know, and I don't need to repeat what we all went through. But what I did discover is Swamiji's lectures, the Essence of Gita lectures, and I started listening to them, as well as all of the Upanishads that he has beautifully given in podcasts. So I discovered them. I transitioned from running to walking because I used to be doing a lot of running, and obviously when you're running, you cannot listen to podcasts and focus on them. So Swamiji's lectures were available in podcasts. So walking was a very great thing. So I started listening to them that way. And then I learned about the practices or the sadhanas that you have to go through, starting with, again, meditation and all the other things. So I used to have a little bit of hypertension, and my doctor had prescribed some very small amount of medication. And then in 21, I went back after doing all these practices fairly regularly. And the weight was controlled a little bit when he looked at everything. But the thing is, he came back and said, you have done something, so I'm not going to prescribe you any more medication because it looks good. The hypertension is not there. In fact, I will tell you, the last month also I went for my annual physical exam, and still it is still being maintained. So my personal experience or a case study for you with this MEDYK framework is that this really works. So it is like we all look for evidence, right? Physical evidence, scientific evidence. That's what we want. And I am scientific evidence for myself. That much I can tell you with this case study. So the other case study I want to talk about is a very interesting one. about 7 years ago, I was working in a very large beverage company. You can guess what company it was. Right here in Atlanta, headquartered in Atlanta. So we were launching this package out of Hyderabad, and you all might be very familiar with some of these packages, 250 ml packages for beverages. And we were launching this package out of Hyderabad, and I was there. We were all there, me and my colleagues, for about at least for 2 to 3 months. We were staying in some hotels there, and some of my friends actually got, they were staying in Starwood hotels, and they got some diamond or platinum, the highest form of membership you can get, because they were staying there, they were traveling, and they were staying in the same hotel for more than 2 months. And we launched this package out of Hyderabad, and during that, one of the gentlemen, he got very upset with some failures that were happening in the field for this package, and he came and he was not able to control himself, with the operations folks, and the people that were doing the development of the package to launch it. So he came to one of my friends, and he just completely blew up. And you can imagine how these things happen when you're doing a launch, a market launch, and some things go wrong. People get very stressed out, and that's what happened. And this person completely lost it, and he was giving all sorts of criticisms, and some of them were actually unscientific too. For example, how something can fail in a package and so on. Anyway, don't need to get into the scientific details here. But my friend was the way he reacted was very interesting. He just had a Buddha-like smile on his face, and he just sat back and listened to the whole thing. And I was just thinking, how can you even do that? And by the way, this is back in 2016. You can imagine. At that time, I was completely, this MEDYK framework sees none of that existed in my life. So I was very shocked actually to observe this friend of mine reacting and responding this way. And finally, he spoke, and he just gave facts after listening to this other colleague who was very, very upset. He gave facts, and he said, this is what I think, and this is why this failure is happening. Let's go address it. So by that time, this other colleague was calmed down, and then, as you can imagine, the problem was solved, because this friend of mine knew exactly how to respond to such a situation. So that's a quick case study I wanted to present. We can get into more details in our discussion. And I want to just quickly conclude here on what Vedanta does for us, for life and for conscious leadership. So as a conclusion, we saw the C's framework, science of consciousness and the material world put together. So on the consciousness side, of course, we have the scriptures, Vedanta, Gita, and Brahma Sutras, and all the scriptures that we already have from India. The science of the material world, I'm just calling it formal education, the education that we all go through anyway. And the obviously on this side, this is focused on the right experience for our minds itself. Here, this is real world pursuit. That's what we go after on a daily basis anyway. And of course, how do we get the right experience over ourselves first is through the MEDYK framework. So that's why this happens to be the subset. Here, we perform actions, for results, because we are looking for career results. So if we take both of those together, they can complement each other and result in this conscious leadership on a daily basis for us. But it doesn't end there, because I believe it goes in a loop. It has to consciously, continuously keep happening on a daily basis for us. Only then we can we can sustain it, and it can go on basically throughout our lives. So that with that, I would like to conclude with the last quotation here. And just out of curiosity, if somebody is familiar with who said this, consciousness cannot be accounted for in physical terms, for consciousness is absolutely fundamental. It cannot be accounted for in terms of anything else. If someone wants to venture a guess, you can put it in the chat window, or we can talk about it. I will give just a few seconds for that. I'm not sure if I can access the chat, but maybe not. Okay, not a problem. Let me just reveal. Yes.
Yeah, Raji,
Yes.
Kimberly G has suggested it is Albert Einstein.
Okay. Albert Einstein is very close. This person was actually highly respectful of Albert Einstein, but it is not Albert Einstein. You can see Einstein right behind me here. I'm a very huge fan of Einstein. It was actually, let me just give you the answer. It's Erwin Schrödinger. Schrödinger had a very, very deep understanding, and he was a big, he happened to be on the, apart from being a quantum theory physicist and all that, happened to be a big proponent of Vedanta. He studied the Upanishads. He was a big fan of Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher from the 1800s. And he always used to say, one equation that everybody would, if you've gone through some basic physics and all that, he proposed the wave equation, because the particles behave like waves and vice versa in the quantum theory. But that was the Schrödinger equation, the popular Schrödinger equation. But he always said, my second equation is Atman equals Brahman, because he had a deep understanding of the Vedanta and Upanishads. And so he discovered this through his learnings himself. So all we are doing is, we are saying that, this is just me adding to this in a slightly cheeky manner here. We have consciousness with the small c. We are capitalizing the c, saying that let us give consciousness the importance it deserves, because that is essentially what drives everything. That is the reality we are after. And that's what we need to pray to and practice. So with that, I will, there is some contact information here. I'll just show this to you all. So if you want to reach out and discuss and talk about even offline, please feel free to. But with that, I will conclude, and thank you very much. Namaskaram. I'll go to the previous one here. Yeah.
Raji, we are having a couple of questions in the chat box, and I've also received some messages. So we'll just take them up. Kimberly G is asking, for many, meditation is a tough place to start. What do you think about using breath work to begin, working with the mind, and then moving up to meditation?
Absolutely. Actually, let me go back here. Yeah. So meditation, when I was talking about meditation, that is how I got started. One of my friends who actually pulled me into meditation, he got a group of us, and the first thing we did was breath work, focusing on the breath. Normal breath, then deep breath exercises, and then so we would do a 30-minute session, and he used to guide us through this. And his name is also Rajesh, by the way, and he lives in California. And so we used to do this at 9 a.m. So he used to wake up at 4 a.m., finish his meditation and yoga, and then he'll teach us breath work and meditation at 6 a.m. his time. It's amazing. So we would do 30 minutes. So the first 10 minutes will focus on deep breath exercises. The second 10 minutes will focus on normal breath and just observing normal breathing. Don't do anything, don't force the breath or anything else, just observe the breath and observe other things happening in the body. The last 10 minutes used to be, he'll try to get us to think and observe our thoughts itself. That's the meditation reflection. So yeah, I mean, my short answer is absolutely, we should start with what we are comfortable with.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Actually, Mala Kapadia ji has written to me through message. So you had mentioned about the idea of experience in the pyramid that you had shared, right? So,
Yeah.
so one thing that she wanted to ask was, how do you think the impact of samskaras, say, with respect to ragas and dveshas, how do you think that ties into this framework, and how does it impact our experience as such?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's a hard question. I will try to answer it, and please, if somebody else, if Malaji or anyone else wants to comment, please do. I will try to answer it based on my limited knowledge experience that I have had so far, and one thing I do want to mention, I'm still learning. I'm still a seeker. I'm still learning a lot of the things. With raga and dvesha, so we all have these samskaras, right? The things, thinking that we are embedded, and we are all unique in that respect. Each one of us has different likes and dislikes, different things that we believe is the right experience for us, and it may not match with the other person's likes and dislikes. However, I believe that just being aware that the experience is there, just being aware and being able to observe that this is my like, this is my desire, this is what I do not like, while we are interacting with somebody, will itself lead to the right experience. So for example, I'll just take our own conversation here. So if I feel that, so I'm thinking right now, and if I feel that I should say something and I don't like saying it, then I will stop myself from saying that, right? So that itself is, that awareness itself is a very powerful thing. And we all have different experiences. I'll give you another very personal experience. Just last night, we were having a conversation, among the family. I was having a conversation with my daughter, and she was perceiving some of the things that I was saying as something else. And I realized that, this is exactly what we are talking about. You might say something which the other person may interpret it as very, very different. It's the communication gap, as we call it. But if we are keeping ourselves constantly aware of what we are thinking and what the words should be and what the action should be, the thought, words, and deed. By the way, that is also Krishna's advice later on in Bhagavad Gita. Then that awareness itself can slowly keep taking us in the right direction to create the right experience. So it's not a immediate switch on and everything is fine. But if there are any other perspectives, please feel free to add.
Sure. She has also expressed that she would like to, get in touch with you. So maybe she
Sure.
may write you offline. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the next question. Manikantan ji has written, you mentioned about yoga as Bahiranga, but you didn't explicitly mention about, say, inner yoga, which is Antaranga. What are your views on Kriya or other practices?
So I have a lot of respect for people who are very, very disciplined and do Kriya Yoga, different types of yoga. A lot of respect for everybody does that does that. My view is, and I'm also learning some of the Patanjali's writings as we speak. The level of focus that any form of yoga brings is extremely extremely impressive for me. So again, the similar type of perspective that I had for the other question from I think Kimberly on the breath work. It's the same thing. Kriya Yoga might work for some of us, may not work for some of us in one stage of in one phase of the yoga, and then we might discover for ourselves, say, this is something that I should start, and I should start practicing on a regular basis. It just so happens that each of our like what Manikandanji was saying, each of our antarangas might be very unique and different, and that's what creates each of us practicing different things at different phases of life. That's my observation, at least.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. We have an interesting question from Ravindra Murthy ji. He says, in the spirit of seeking truth, why do we introduce Vedanta into all of this when Vedanta does away with the me or the doership? Yeah. I would submit to you that simple common sense approach would achieve everything that you have outlined. So basically, I think what he's referring to is there seems to be an approach that Vedanta is following that is, moving away from doership and me-ship. So he's possibly not able to tie that in. And he's also asking, I'm also curious about the title, conscious leadership. There is nothing independent of consciousness in any case. So he's just asking these questions.
Yeah, I hope I got his name right. Ramachandra Murthy?
Ravindra Murthy.
Ravindra Murthy. Ravindra Murthy ji, thank you so much for that comment and question. I'm actually going to completely agree with you. Because I don't think, yes, Vedanta wants to do away with the me-ness or the I itself, right? We all develop our independent sense of I with all the concepts that Vedanta is presenting to us, and I think it is actually very factual, and it wants to get rid of that. In one sense, that's I do agree, and that's what I'm trying to tell over here. That's kind of the hidden message here is this is basically what Vedanta is telling us, right? There is no I, there is no we start with we realize that we are part of the bigger whole, and then everybody is starting to realize it, and then finally we say, what is the difference? There is actually no difference. Everything is the same thing. So which is why I'm completely in agreement with what you're saying. And this conscious leadership, I thought about some of what you said when Sai-ji was saying, hey, how is this related to this? And it had me introspect quite a bit on this. And it leads me to believe that this is definitely the gap. Because if we bring this, then this happens. If you do not bring this, this can never get rid of the me-ness or the I part of it, right? Because we will consider ourselves separate or separated or unique, different constructs, whereas we are not. So I hope that that answers that, but we can definitely discuss.
Raji, if I may join in rather than
yes,
bring
Yes.
it at the end. See, for example, everyday leadership is definitely not conscious leadership, the way we are defining consciousness. Especially you use the word capital C. See, we can't say egoic actions or egoic leading is conscious leadership. We are not saying it.
Yeah.
Right. If there is me, if there is I, and if there is in that also competitive I, raga, dvesha, there is combative I, definitely it's not conscious leadership. So we cannot presume that whatever action which is happening is conscious. It's not. Most of the time it is unconscious actions which are governed by our samskaras, our socialization, our beliefs, which may be conscious, may not be conscious. Like for example, the case you gave about the Hyderabad incident. There was one reactive, egoic, what in our thing we call it avidya-based leadership or avidya-based karma from your earlier colleague, and there was that smiling Buddha colleague brought in what we call dharma kshetra response. We call it the first is avidya response, avidya-based response. Second is the dharma-based response. So what is your second colleague demonstrated is conscious leadership, not the first one. Now, with this demonstrating that conscious leadership, the other person also got in touch with his own partial consciousness. Otherwise, that's why even otherwise he would not have calmed down. He would have still been in whatever state he was. So you can see that not only conscious leadership is self-leadership, but if you demonstrate that, you make it available, it elevates other people also to come to that place. This is so it's not that if you are on autopilot and if it is triggered by your own likes and dislikes and vasanas and samskaras, which are not refined in a dharmic way, it will not be conscious leadership. So conscious leadership is definitely a striving which comes through vichara, shravana, manana, vichara, then all that, and also the viveka, vairagya, Shama, Shakta Sampatti. Without all that, it's easy to say me, not me, beyond me, and all that. But I think we are all embodied beings. We have a body consciousness. Most of us operate from that. So it's not straight away correlation. Just because you listen to Vedanta and say, I'm not this me, I am the whole, you will not become the whole the next moment after listening. So I think that's the difference. So there is a gradation of how the me-ness, I-ness, my-ness start losing grip on our mind, if I can use the word mind, because you talked about mind balance, and you also use the word right experience. You have regular experience may be right, or I would like to use the word appropriate or not appropriate. May be appropriate, may not be appropriate. May be dharmic, may not be dharmic. But if say more and more of our actions, more and more of our this thing, the way mind is experiencing, mind is engaging with the world, if it is tending towards dharmic, then definitely we are talking about building the right experience, transforming the mind or transitioning the mind from a avidya of raga, dvesha, whatever it is, to more and more conscious. Still, it's not the capital C. It is still gradation. It is still graduation. Yes. So when you are entering the school of kindergarten, we enter the kindergarten of Vedanta or kindergarten of Bhagavad Gita. We don't enter at the PhD level. I think that's a wishful thinking. It doesn't happen yet. So I think we have to go through the process. So to that extent, what you mentioned about the quality of observing oneself by detaching, I think that's what the whole thing, nishkamya karma, detaching while doing the action. So when you are doing nishkamya karma, the doership is qualitatively different from when you are doing the karma without getting caught with the result. I would like to stop at that. Then we can take the next question. Or next set of questions. There are more questions.
No, it's beautiful, Saji. You mentioned the unconscious leadership that might be happening in this area. And then there's a gradation of how we go from here into this with the conscious gradation of the consciousness and observation increasing. That's very, very beautiful.
Yeah. We have one more question from Anjan Nandiji. He says, your whole explanation is on body, mind, and senses. How can we correlate in the present context when there's so much distraction from many challenges?
Yeah, so many distractions from many directions. Is that the
many distractions, and I'm guessing he's saying, and so many challenges to, in a sense, integrate these three levels.
Yeah. Again, a very hard question. I can only present my own personal experience, which is like I was talking about. Let me go to that page. Actually, I was talking about what happened to myself during COVID. COVID made us think about ourselves, like what is happening, right? It gave us all a lot of time to really reflect. And if you all remember, there was even a video on Mumbai with drones or something. I remember that. The streets of Mumbai, streets which usually were filled with people, and the seaside and beaches and everything, there was a big video made. And then there's nothing there, absolutely nothing. If you think about that, we have to somehow get that. That's the question that that you are asking. We have to get to that state. The mind is itself like is a busy Mumbai street. How do you get to the COVID state? I'm sorry to say this, but that COVID state made us reflect that there is a state where none of that crowdedness, none of that is there. It's absolutely calm, right? It really, my personal experience is because of the COVID, I started walking, and I was able to make time for myself. 1 hour, 1.5 hours, I'll walk 4 miles, 5 miles, sometimes 6 miles, and listen to Swamiji's lectures. And there is nothing else, only it's me and him, and he is talking to me, and that's it. So when I listen to it, there's 100% focus in what he is saying. So I was really able to, there's a lot of, I would say, I would observe myself laughing. He will joke, he will present a joke sometimes on, Raga Dvesha, in fact, likes and dislikes, how he sometimes used to like eating 15 idlis or 20 idlis. And then suddenly he stopped himself and he realized that he should not be doing that anymore, and things like that. Very simple things, but they are very, very funny. But I do remember them, right? Because I was focusing on that and only that for that 1.5 hours. Some of my family, I think in the book also I refer, some people like to listen to other types of podcasts. There is one very popular podcast called Hidden Brain. It's by the gentleman called Shankar Vedantam. He's part of the National Public Radio here, NPR. Very popular person. He's a journalist. And he talks about different things about how the human brain works and psychological concepts. But again, if you start listening to that, your mind is going only there and very focused on only that aspect. So I will say that, sorry, I will conclude with this one thing. I had a chance to meet Swamiji with myself and 3 of our friends from our Gita Satsang early last year. And we spent 2 hours with him. He was very selfless. He gave us all the time in his ashram. And one question we had was, how do I get up at 4 a.m.? My friend Rajesh is doing that every day. How do I get up at 4 a.m. or early morning every day? I've never been an early morning person. And he said, you have to start with what you like. Start with your likes. If you like watching some thriller movies, wake up at 4 a.m. and watch the thriller movie. You will wake up. Or if you have a flight at 5 a.m., you will wake up at 4 a.m. to go for that flight. So my answer is going to be, First thing we have to learn to get rid of distraction is, let's see if we can focus on what we really like to do. If we like to watch, and it might be something very ridiculous, like I want to watch IPL for the next 5 hours. So let's just do only that and see if we don't even check our phone, but watch only IPL, right? You can't do anything else, watch only IPL cricket. Then I think we will learn the power of, not getting distracted. That's just what I heard from Swamiji, and it has worked for me. I can tell you that. Anything else to add, Saiji or anyone, please?
No, not in this point. There is one more question. There are a couple of more. Take it up, then we will get into some more perspectives. Yes.
So Radha Krishnan ji has asked, in a competitive, progressive corporate world, can you elaborate on the challenges on a lone warrior who follows conscious leadership while the rest of the world around him or her could be could be in the rat race kind of mode?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question, actually. So the rat race actually is not avoidable. So I work in a corporate environment, and so do most of us. And it is unavoidable. There will be a lot of people in in the rat race and so on, and we are also part of it. We have to live with that reality for sure. The thing is, how about renaming the rat race as getting to progress? And if we practice the conscious leadership, I can almost guarantee you that our environment around ourselves will change, because it is like the example that I can think of is like quantum mechanics. Like if you have an atom and it influences the environment around it, and the environment also changes and influences the atom. That's just the scientific thing. So if we consider ourselves our and our circle, our environment around us every day, and we start practicing this, it's not only in the corporate world. Why not at home also? If we start practicing this, I believe that over time it will change. And I go back to what Saiji was saying. There is a gradation here. I think it takes time. And we have to be very consistent and very deliberate about practicing this and be observant of ourselves and our actions on a daily basis. I guarantee you things will change, people will change around us. And it's like, the final example that I can present is, you would have seen some movies where if Amitabh or Kamal Hassan is acting, everybody around that person will appear like a good actor, right? And that itself is like almost like conscious leadership. That actor is making the others look really good because the level he or she is at a different level. So that will happen, but it will take time, depending on how we pace ourselves.
Raji, you mentioned about the atom influencing and being influenced by its surroundings. I had a question actually.
Yes.
There is this. I'm not a student of physics, but I had briefly come across the theory that the very action of observing has the impact of the object that is being observed itself. So, I just wanted to understand how does, like, at least say in physics terms, is there any connection between that and some of what you have described until now? Because
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about it. Yeah.
No, it's a good question. I will start by saying I'm not a quantum physics person. I can give a very elementary understanding of what how I understand it. But if Dr. Kaipaji, Dr. Prasadji is there on the call, he is the quantum physicist among our in our midst. He will be able to beautifully explain that much better than me. But this phenomenon you're talking about is in one way it is called quantum entanglement, which means that one particle can influence the other and vice versa, and that is how it is throughout the universe, is what is slowly being realized. And I think the people that worked on quantum entanglement won the Nobel Prize last year or the year before, I believe. Anyway, having said that, so think about we are making a measurement on anything. Let's say we are measuring the length of anything. The thing that is making the measurement itself, how do we know that it is not influencing the measurement of the length, right? So, how are we 100% sure of that? That is basically what this quantum entanglement talks about. If there is and a lot of times in Vedanta also we say, like, if you are thinking, the thought waves can influence another person's thought waves and so on. That doesn't get into the quantum theory, but in the quantum theory, it all is focused in the physical world. So the very act of observation is going to change it, and it goes back to the last person we saw in this in these slides, Schrodinger, and this popular cat experiment and all that. There's always a probability of anything, of all particles, and then the very act of observation collapses it to one particular state, the so-called wave function collapse and all that. Like I said, I'm not very clued into the great depths of it. I'm still learning some of it, but that is essentially the concept. And it's no different from what Vedanta talks about, but with one key caveat being, quantum theory still is going after describing the physical, observed, unobserved world. It still is in the right side of that equation. The consciousness is different. We have to be very clear about it. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. That really explains. Yeah. Thank you. We have
Namrata, before you go, Raji, Prasadji confirms. I will just read it out as it is. Yes, the observer does affect the observed, and as Raji rightly pointed out, it is quantum entanglement.
Okay. So okay. So I wasn't too far. Thank you, Prasadji.
Yeah, Namrata, please.
Yeah. Yes. There is Khagan Kalitaji who is writing, is it possible to find out the conscious leadership among politicians at present?
Oh, that is a lightning rod. So I will not get into, politicians or scientists or any, we have to look at it. We can't say who is a conscious leader until I'll go back to the results pyramid, right? What is the experience? Is it giving us the right experience, leading to the right beliefs, actions, and creating the right results for us? So whoever it is that is following conscious leadership as a conscious leader, whether he or she is a politician or I've seen a lot of videos on politicians who are very deep conscious leaders, and so have we all, so have you all. And I've seen politicians and leaders who are not conscious leaders as well. So I will leave it at that, but we can think of it very simple. just go to the results pyramid. We don't have to go into deep Vedanta for it. Do they create the right experiences for the people? That's the goal of the politicians, and giving us the right beliefs, actions, and results. That's the I think that's the key. Yeah.
Rajji, if I may join,
Yes.
let's have a conversation on, say, a couple of the most important parts. One is this thing about balancing the mind and observing the observer. I think this is the key part of it. If you are observing the observer, or if you are observing the doer, we are bringing in consciousness into the whole process, rather than an autopilot kind of action or whatever, to whatever is happening in life. So that's one. Now, who is observing, or where is that person observing from, becomes very, very important. So the way we have looked at it in IAW is that we talk about 4 kshetras. We talk about what all are born into, which is the Avidya kshetra. Then you have the Dharma kshetra. Then you have the Jnana kshetra. And we also have Sachidananda kshetra. Now, when we talk most of the kind of thing we talked about Vedanta, me not being present, doer being not present, we are talking about actually Dhyana kshetra and Sachidananda kshetra. Whereas we are, whoever the beings are in Avidya kshetra, will have to move out of the entanglements of Avidya kshetra into Dharma kshetra, root them, start at the kindergarten of Dharma kshetra, then graduate, then end up the kindergarten of Dhyana kshetra, then move on and on. And these are all very, very, say, time determinant processes. This is one part of it. Now, for those who don't understand something, Avidya kshetra is what we are calling entropic peak. And Dharma kshetra is enlivening peak. And Dhyana kshetra is coherent peak. And Sachidananda kshetra is generative peak. So as the, for this is like entropic field is the, what you call, empirically scientific way of describing Avidya kshetra. Otherwise, Avidya is normally talked about as ignorance. There is a response to my comments or my observations from the person who asked the question. Is about ignorance. So there are some schools we talk about Avidya as ignorance, but the pure Vedantic kind of school will talk about Avidya as nations. But essentially it means it's a chaotic, it is a entropic kind of a disorderly field that we are all normally in. That's raga, dvesha, various vibrations that bring in disorder. Now, enlivening field, Dharma kshetra is our description definition is very simple. Whatever that brings me alive, brings others alive in my interactions, my immediate context alive, that is enlightened, which is what you were also saying. I can be a conscious observer of my own actions when I am doing something. I can be a conscious observer of my action when I am interacting with the other. If that other person also does that, then truly an enlivening field comes alive. The Dharma kshetra comes alive between those two people. And if I can actually do from a, so Dhyana kshetra for us is the state of witness. So what you're seeing as observer, we will say, very rarely you can observe when you are in Avidya kshetra because you're so caught in your own actions. But if you're in Dharma kshetra, you develop the quality of being an observer. And if you can actually develop it further, where any previous experiences or previous coding, conditioning is not influencing your observation, then you're moving into what a Dhyana kshetra kind of observation, which is the coherent field, which is like a witness. In this thing we call it a seership, or normally it's called sakshi, the sakshi power. So if you have the sakshi, it's a process. It's like your MEDYK can be a process through which a person can assiduously work on whatever is holding that person in the Avidya kshetra kind of vibrations and that chaotic kind of possibilities, distractions, multiple things that come. So moving into an enlivening thing where I feel I am part of the whole, I feel connected with others. You showed that, two faces looking at each other kind of thing. Am I seeing in the other person my own mirror? or can I be a good mirror unto the other person? All that is that Buddha like kind of colleague was a complete Dharma Kshetra or an enlivening field kind of a location, probably bordering on even Dhyana Kshetra, I would say, from your description, whereby
Yes.
he just stayed, and after all that, entropic reactions came from the other person who's contributing to that whole, say, dialogue and solutioning, then a high quality solution was enabled because there was one person holding the space in enlivening, bordering on coherent field. So
Yeah.
I'm just adding to what you have. So I think the observer and the observer is who is observing. Most of our case, it is the buddhi mind, kind of observation. If you say the buddhi is observing compared to like that kind of stuff, then in that also from buddhi to going up to ahankara, then going beyond ahankara is when the sakshi and other things become more and more rooted. I think you're that seer, the seen, and observer and the observed, I think is a fundamental thing that one has to continuously engage and see what the quality of observation, or what is the quality of the observer. So in fact, we used a couple of questions. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? In doing what am I doing? What am I really doing? So in doing what am I doing? What am I really doing will bring in the question of who is this? Is it a raga-based doing? Is it a dvesha-based doing? Or is it an equanimous doing? All that comes alive. So I'm just adding to, we have not, I don't think we have discussed this perspective with you. We will share our paper on this with you subsequent to this conversation.
Oh,
so I think it's,
very
you got it. Yeah, you got it very bang on when you say observer. If you can bring in the practice of observation and through MEDYK, make this observer more and more subtle and less entangled, less conditioned. I think that's the path. Into conscious living and conscious living. It's not black and white. It is not, red and green or whatever it is. So more and more consciousness in acting, thinking, everything. These are the unconscious actions. Unconscious. See, action also comes from what you witness. If you're seeing itself colored, obviously interpretation gets colored. Then the action is also gets colored. So I will stop at that. I would like to listen to your response to this, and then I think we can.
No, I think that's actually a very nice way of thinking about it, and I'll go back to this last one. The science of consciousness itself. What you have said is like bring in the science as an observation and keep observing and slowly changing ourselves, and that is actually the way of how to execute it and changing ourselves over time. It's very beautiful actually, and that can sit with this. I mean, these are some practices for our own personal everyday kind of living, but when you go and start interacting, this is only self for ourselves that we are working on. And I think somebody was talking about you're talking about body, mind, and senses only. And of course, the meditation part is for beyond that. But again, there are stages in that. But and the yoga as well. But the other things, exercise, diet, and all that, it's of course focused on body, mind, and doing our duties the right way, karma yoga, with the right attitude, and so on. But what I think you are bringing in is that is true. But when we get into the interaction, the science of observation comes in, and that's where I like the 4 kshetras, like you said. How do we cross from one kshetra to the next that would be beautiful to add on to this and make that actually work for us. But thanks a lot. I would love to read that. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Raji. We are dot on time, and very wonderful wonderful, personally anchored, subjectively anchored, authentic way of discussing things. I mean, you were very open, like here, I am also on the path. So all of us are. So with all that humility, all that openness, if we can grapple with some of these things in terms of consciousness in life and living, then whereby we can also lead consciously. And of course, as you put it very, very appropriately and clearly, leading self comes before leading anybody else. So I think leading self through right experiences being continuously generated by the quality of observation, the act of observation, and also enhancing the quality of the observation through a practice which you find as MEDYK, where meditation was Antaranga Yoga, definitely. And the rest of it has to be there. Without that, meditation alone will not make anything possible. So I think it's a beautiful way in which we can look at this. Very graspable. You gave very live examples, including Swamiji giving very, quote unquote, Zen kind of everyday example, from a Vedantin Swamiji, some kind of Zen kind of everyday example being quoted, and all that was very lively. Overall, a very enlivening session. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you so much. Namaste and namaskaram to everyone for participating.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.